Okay, let's begin. Today's Pirke Abot class, we are in chapter 5, Mishna 22. I'll have you know as well that I went searching through the deep bowels of my phone, trying to find all the various Mishnayot that were missing in the group, both here and in the Gemara Ta'anit group. And I finally found all of them, Baruch Hashem. So all the Mishnayot are now uploaded there. Today's class is dedicated in the zechut of Leah Esther Bat Rivka. Leah Rivka Bat Esther. But Leah Esther Bat Rivka should also find her shidduch. Whoever she is. Whoever you are. We're studying for you too. Be'ezat Hashem b'sha'a tova u'mutzlachat b'nachal v'lo b'tzar revach lo b'tzimtzum b'eter v'lo b'isur. Also as a refuah shlema for Yaakov Tamar ben Malka and Yitzhak ben Sarah. Okay. The Mishnah says, Mishnah 22. Remember, if you're following in some Mishnayot, this Mishnah will not be 22, it will be 21. There's some Mishnayot, some books, they categorize the 21st as the 22nd, 22nd as the 21st, but you'll recognize the Mishnah because it's very, very clear. Hu haya omer. He used to say, who's he? He who we left off with. Who did we leave off with? Ben Bagbag was first. Ben Hey, exactly. Okay, so Ben Hey continues, Hu haya omer. Ben, the truth is, I'm just realizing now, as I say this, who said this Mishnah is dependent if 22 came first or second. Because if it came before, then Ben Bagbag and Ben Hey are after. He's not the who. Who is the guy from the Mishnah in Mishnah number 20? So I'm not actually sure offhand who Mishnah number 20 was without you can maybe look at if someone else has it with them. But hu haya omer, whoever it was, either Ben Hey or, I thought you had it, okay, said, Ben Chamesh Shanim Lemikra. Can I just have a disclaimer? Anyone in this room 100? You might want to leave now. If you read ahead, you'll know. You don't like what this says, right? So anyone who's 100, now's your chance to leave. All right, before we read the end of the Mishnah, right? So we'll get to there. I'll just skip to the end for a second. Ben me'ah, a person who's 100, ki'ilu met ve'avar. It's as if he's passed away, ve'avar batil min ha'olam, and left this world. First of all, what a nasty thing to say. Come on. How disgusting. Oh, there we go. We're back. Okay. Warning for epileptics. Please be careful. The light is now. I'll just edit it. So, I'll just share with you my grandpa's joke while it's flashing. You know, in Judaism, like what did you say? The number is 120, right? You know, you tell people, I wish you till 120, I wish you till 120. Ad me'avesrim. So there's a guy, my grandpa used to love this joke. Guy who goes to a birthday party, and it's for the great-great-grandmother. So he goes up to the great-great-grandmother, and he's like, oh, Mazal Tov, Mabruk. How old are you? She goes, I'm 120, today's my birthday. So she says, I'm 120. Today's my birthday. So the guy, he doesn't know what to say. So he says, have a nice day.
What do you say?
So I always, oh gosh. Defund the fire department. Okay. I can't anymore. This is amazing. So, okay, we got rid of the sound at least. So, the Mishnah, when it says this idea, we're going to get to it. It doesn't actually mean this concept. It doesn't mean that the person's dead. That's not the point. As you correctly pointed out, if that's what it meant, then that number would be at 120. In fact, that's a pasuk in the Torah that talks about this number 120 as this time when someone spends life on this planet. That's how old they are. Bishegamu basar, because he is in the end of the day only flesh. So the Torah says, it should be till 120. That's how long Moshe Rabbeinu lived. Okay, now. What's fascinating to me is actually, and we're starting with the end here, just because I know it's going to be bothersome for people. If you skip to the end, you see Ben Me'ak ilu met ve'avaru batel min ha'olam. 100 years old, it's as if he's batel, and avar min ha'olam. We don't mean that the guy's dying or that the guy is dead. There's a word there. It says ki'ilu. Much of what we're going to discuss in this Mishnah is what a person's purpose here is in the world. What a person is supposed to think at that age or stage in their life that I need to do or I need to accomplish. At the age of 100, says the Mishnah, there's not a specific thing that a person needs to accomplish. Because most people never reach that exalted age. In fact, in England, I remember when I was living there, at an age of 100 years old, you got a special letter written by Her Majesty the Queen. Not 120. Not 105. At the age, you remember? How old are you?
No, there was one guy from England.
Oh, okay.
100, it was all over the news.
Oh, it was all over the news. I was like, you got 100, you got a letter from the Queen. You're like, I remember. I was like, you look amazing. Okay?
You mentioned that.
So you remember the story. Okay, so the Mishnah does not mean that the guy is dead or that he should anticipate dying. That's not what it's saying. What it's saying is, at that stage, the prep that a person is thinking in their mind is they're preparing for Yom HaMitah. So they're getting affairs in order. They're deciding what they want their legacy to be. They're figuring out how to divide the Yerusha. Every stage has something that a person needs to be worried about. So that's what he's saying. At the stage of 100 years old, Ki'ilu met, the person is already at that point in their life when this is normally happening for most people. So they need to prepare to pass away. And my friends, yes, a person has to prepare to pass away. There was once a man who was running his business, his rabbi said to him, he said, where are you running? Did you study any Torah today? Did you do any mitzvot? He goes, no, Rabbi. He says, I have to prepare. He goes, I have to make a living. I have to repair, my affairs. I need to do everything to make a living, to live my life. And he says, you made so many preparations all day, every day to live. Had you made any preparations to die? The man was shaking. What a comment. Who says that, right? And he says, what do you mean? He says, in order to live, you need to have money, you need to have shelter, but what do you need in order to die? You need to have made peace, with your issues. You need to have, sorted out your machloket. You need to have rectified your wrongs. You're ready to live. Are you ready to die? And the man was so shaken, he quit his business. And he became one of the most famous rabbis of the last century. He became the Alter of Slobodka. From one comment. What a wild, interesting comment. And I think that's really what the Mishnah is saying over here for the person at 100 years old. Are you ready? Have you made your peace? I remember being in the room with people who have passed away. And one of the things I'll ask them is there anything left that you feel you need to accomplish or you need to do before you go? And I remember being in a room with someone who said to me, I wish I need to make up with my daughter-in-law. And the family's sitting behind the curtain, and they're listening in to what's being said. They gave her privacy to speak to the rabbi in her final moments. And I said, well, would you like me to? We can get her on the phone. And she says, yes. And the phone's on speaker. And she's literally with her last breaths. And she has this conversation with her daughter-in-law. What if, instead of coming by scooter that day, I came by cab and I got caught in traffic on Columbus Circle? What if I got on the subway to come here and there was a train that derailed or someone got pushed bar minan and the train came 20 minutes later? She wouldn't miss the chance. So the Mishnah is telling you, a person needs to prepare to go. On a financial level, it's a smart thing to make preparations for what's going to happen afterwards. Usually, having those specific instructions can save the shalom of a family forever and ever. It's not a stupid thing. It's not a morbid thing. People think, I don't like to think about these types of things. No such thing. It's part of life is death. It's a natural, for Jews, the way we believe, it's a natural progression. So yeah, a person should think about that.
At what age?
So the Mishnah here is telling you, at 100, make the prep. But really, a person's supposed to be thinking about it always. Not dying, let me make this clear. Not dying. That which comes after. Yeah. This is eternity. The time you'll spend in Olam Haba is longer than the time you'll spend here, however long you get. So it's important to plan for your future. People don't think of those terminologies. Plan for your future, we think is a 401k. But planning for your future is the zechuyot, the mitzvot that you have, the issues you need to take care of. All of that is planning for the future. So now, we've started with the last thing of the Mishnah, because I didn't want anyone wandering down there and then being very upset and not understanding what the Mishnah is saying. Be'ezrat Hashem, the 100-year-old should live another happy 20 full productive years. Ad 120. But at the same time, don't ignore the reality. Don't ignore the reality of where the person is. So let's go back now towards the beginning. The Mishnah is giving us an outline for the process of life. And I must say, there's a few things I always enjoyed about this Mishnah. And a few of the things that I enjoyed in this Mishnah have nothing to do with what the Mishnah actually says. So let's go through the Mishnah, and then I want to hear, first of all, some of your comments. But also, I want to share with you what makes this Mishnah special for me. The Mishnah says, Ben chamesh shanim lemikra. 5 years old, a child should already be studying Pesukim from the Torah. At the age of 5, they would teach the kids. Some people do even younger. They start them with specific Pesukim. Torah tzivan lanu Moshe morasha kilat Yaakov. That's one of the first Pesukim that we teach children. Other Pesukim as well. Shema Yisrael, Hashem Elokeinu, Hashem Echad. A child learns these first Pesukim right in the very beginning. And I think what the Mishnah here is communicating is that a child is never really too young to start absorbing material and absorbing information. At the age of 5 years old, when he's just a little wee kid, and he's throwing temper tantrums, and he's doing all these crazy things, and he's still, acting up, and you think he's so immature, that time is actually a great learning time for a child. But there's a specific type of learning that works for a child at that age bracket. At the age of 5 until the age of 10, so 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, a child is capable of absorbing information that is frontal, that is preloaded. The Pesukim of the Torah are as they are. And in fact, on some level, unlike the study of what comes next, there are no changes, there are no surprises. There's nothing that the child cannot know. There's nothing that the child cannot verify for itself. So it's almost as if you would call it fact-based learning with complete transparency. Those are the lessons that children of that age can and do pick up and retain. At the next age bracket, ben 10 shanim le-mishnah. At the age of 10, a child is already ready for the next stage of learning. And it doesn't only, like I said earlier, it doesn't only mean Torah and Mishnah. It means the type of learning that is included when one studies Torah. The Pesukim are as they are. There's no other version. There's no machloket on the Pasuk. A child of that age cannot deal with a multiplicity of opinions. They don't understand or have the balance to say, he says this, and there's something to be learned on either side. They need absolutes. It's also true, by the way, about discipline. A kid can't handle at that age. Sometimes mommy responds like this. Sometimes mommy responds like this. They have a skewed sense of what they're allowed to do and what they're not allowed to do. And what they learn is actually, by the way, that on a good day, when mommy's having a nice time, you can get away with this, 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 and this. If mommy's got rosé, no problems all day. If mommy's relaxed, no problem. Play with the Xbox, do what you want. Mommy's not relaxed, mommy's having a bad day. Ooh, today's the day for good behavior. I better not say shut up or stupid, right? Because that's the day I'm getting punished. You've taught your child that they should be completely governed by their state of their emotional health. These are what kids learn at that age, absolute lessons. And sometimes when in parenting, a parent needs to put the foot down, not because it's an important issue. You know, when you're an adult, they tell you, is it worth fighting over? Is this important enough to take a stand? With children, sometimes something very unimportant can be worth taking a stand over. Because you're not teaching the child this. You're teaching the child this. Yeah? So the Mishnah tells us that at the age of 10, a child is ready for a more comprehensive form of understanding. And at that stage, he's ready, ben eser shanim le-Mishnah. 10 years, he's ready for the Mishnah, to study something where you learn something from something. Where there's clarification that's off the page. Where they understand that even though it's not right that my sister did this, I don't have to stand on the principle and grab it back because she was crying. That's when a kid learns. When a child is younger than that and you take it away and you say, don't you see she's crying? The kid looks at you, he's like, but it's mine. That's a mikra understanding. You're demanding from a child a Mishnah understanding. And the kid doesn't have the capacity to deal with that. So he thinks, again, mommy just made a huge mistake. She just wants her to be quiet. Or she loves them better. Or she decides things based on emotion. So I can too. Okay? Ben shlosh esrei lemitzvot. At the age of 13, a child is no longer at the stage where they're learning things, inculcating information, but rather they're at the stage where they can take responsibility to turn that information into action. And the point of this, it's not the kid that's going to learn this Mishnah and be like, oh gosh, I really need to get a move on. I'm already 10 and I haven't started the Mishnah. Over here, the point is that the parents are supposed to try and help the child reach these milestones, okay? The next stage is mitzvot, is to make the child responsible for taking the information he has and turning it into mitzvot. Actually putting into practice all the things that he learned. Not just, again, like I said, not just in the simplistic, return a lost object, because the pasuk says, hashavat avedah. It means in all areas of action and responsibility and carrying out commands. A mitzvah is called a commandment. Okay? But there's something else as well. One of the things we learn when it comes to mitzvot is that the word mitzvah is made up of two words. The first word of mitzvah is a commandment. But the other element of the word mitzvah has its root in the word tzavta.
What's the
Tzavta. Excellent. Together.
And then it comes back.
Tzavta means when something comes together. Los tzavta. Tzavta. Okay? Biyachad. Bidyuk. Dvarim, anashim, omdim, b'tzavta. That's how you would say it. People standing together. Because one function of the mitzvah is as a top-down commandment. The powerful being commanding the less powerful being. But the intent in God's mitzvot is not in illustrating or brandishing that power, but rather in giving you something that will help you come together with Him. The more you are like God, the more you are connected with God. That's how all relationships work. You work on common ground. And those things bring the people, those two people, husband and wife, parents and children, together. That's why it's important to do the kids' things with the kids, to get into their headspace. Why? Because when a person is doing something the child likes, and the parent, they know that this is not what the parent normally does, the child feels in that a coming toward them. They feel in that the parent is with me, is connected to me. That's why time with the children, especially focused on things that they like, is very important. And in fact, sometimes people think, oh wow, let's find something that the whole family can enjoy, that I can enjoy, and you could enjoy. You have to realize you just robbed your child of something. Because if the kid sees that this is something that you enjoy, then you did it for you, not you didn't do it for me. Okay? Now, let's carry on. The Mishnah continues and says, so ben shlosh mitzvot, at the age of 13, the child is capable of mitzvot, of fulfilling commandments. But a deeper understanding, as I said earlier, is at 13 years old, a child is capable of mitzvot, of connection, of building togetherness, both with regards to the mitzvot and God, but also with regards to other human beings. How do I know that that's the case? Because there's many mitzvot in the Torah that require ve'ahavta l'reacha kamocha. They require other personed empathy. They require connection with others in order to be able to move forward. Is that clear? So when the Mishnah tells you that, ben shlosh etzrei mitzvot, that's really what it's saying. The Mishnah then continues and says, ben chamesh esrei, at the age of 15, the Gemara. At the age of 15, a child can study Gemara. In what way does Gemara differ from Mishnah? In our holistic approach in understanding this Mishnah, Gemara is not only Mishnah, which is statements, but it's the pulling apart of the underlying logic that is there.
It's more Aramaic.
For sure, it's Aramaic, true. But in the understanding of what we mean conceptually, when we say Gemara, there's a fundamental difference in the Mishnah and in the Gemara. In the Mishnah, everything is just said, but it's said with its different interpretations. The Gemara is literally the back and forth, the analysis required to be able to understand. And even more important, it's the ability to understand two sides and choose one. So what's really interesting is there's this process that begins with a young child that's only capable of understanding one opinion, a child that then learns at the next stage that there are two opinions, and he accepts both of them. And then the final part where the child actually learns that from those two, they need to choose and ascertain which is the correct one. So you've, in a certain sense, come back full circle, one time unknowingly, one time knowingly. What an interesting process. And I was thinking to myself once that this process is not only a process that happens at the age of the development of a child, but also at the development of a person, the different stages a person goes through in a state of conflict. Initially, they only really understand one side. Then, as kind of they mature, they kind of relax themselves a little bit, they get to see the other side. But just because you see the other side and your empathy allows you to understand it, doesn't mean it's correct. You see, this frozen stage is where much of our society lives. They struggle to understand the other person and then think that the other person, just because you're trying to understand them, means you need to validate them and you need to agree with them. There is such a thing as an opinion which is wrong. We are allowed to have a stance that something is incorrect. We need to take the time to understand it. And with many of these issues, people are bringing up valid points and valid feelings. And if you don't listen, you're also wrong, because you're at the lowest age of understanding. You're at the perhaps mikra level of understanding. You get to the Mishnah level, you understand two opinions. You get to the Gemara level and you use your analysis, your deductions to be able to make up your own mind. Much of our society has not got to this stage. Okay? Carries on the Gemara, the Mishnah. Ben shmona esrei lechuppah. From the age of 18, a person is ready for chuppah. Now that sounds to me and to you a little bit nuts. We think to ourselves, 18, wow, they're just a kid. But I just, for the sake of historical perspective, in the Middle Ages, you know what the average age range of a person was? No. How old did they live till? 38. They died at 36 years old. Who said that? 36 or 35 years old. Half of your life was 18. Could you imagine a bachelor being like, yeah, I kind of feel like I should get married early 30s. Right? So they got married much younger. And the girls were even younger than that because they matured even faster than the boys did. And what's interesting to me as well about this is that when you're 36, you mature at 18. Why? Because you have to. You know, we come from a generation where no problem. It's even desirable to sit in school and then finish high school and then go to college and then go for higher education and then go for a residency. And you haven't worked you haven't worked yet until you're 30. You know what I mean? For us, that's like wow, this guy's a fantastic PhD, right? They didn't have that luxury. We look back at the times before and we're like, yeah, they were uneducated. They weren't uneducated. They needed to eat. They were going to die 3 minutes after they got their degree. Like, you know what I mean? It was just not, it wasn't possible. What we can do today, they didn't have that luxury. Now, I'm not saying people should not study. But if you are a university student until 22, and then you go for a higher degree until you're 26, and then you're still living in your parents' basement, you know, everything is being done for you. So you don't have to grow up, and you don't need to worry about bills. Because daddy and mom are there for you. There's no question that the reality of our lives dictates the age at which a person needs to take themselves in the hand and be responsible. I know someone that got married and had to be taught, after they got married, they had to be taught how to turn on the washing machine, how to do the laundry. 25, 27, 28 years old. Wow. Why? Lived at home. Threw their stuff in the thing. Miraculously, it came back, folded in the, I think maybe that's why some couples, they put on their wedding registry list, they put the exact same laundry hamper that they had in their room. Like, let's get this is the magic one. You just throw this stuff in it. The next day, it's in your drawer, folded. Amazing. I don't even think we need a washing machine and dryer. If we get exactly the laundry basket that was in my room from my childhood, we're sorted. You know, when did I learn how to do my own laundry? When I was 14 years old. Because when I was 13, in year one, you had to drag your laundry home. I still remember my roommate and really good friend had a laundry bag, big red laundry bag. And you know what it said on it? Hey Ma, I'm home. So in year one, you're home, you're there, you're going home every week. I had enough underwear, socks, t-shirts, undershirts. I had enough to last me the week. Year two in yeshiva, you're there for 2 weeks. Ain't nobody had 14 pairs of socks. But we didn't. So you know what happened? By the way, even in camp, they pick up your laundry. What happens in yeshiva when you're going 2 weeks and you run out? You have to learn to go down into the dungeon and face the big scary machine. Does it involve numerous instances of bleached socks? Probably. But you learn, and that's how you learn. And then you know how to do the laundry. And then you realize that people who don't know how to do the laundry are just morons. Because it says all the instructions on the machine and on the box. Figure it out. They write it also for people that have no education in their life. I remember reading, there was a cereal, I was in yeshiva in Bayonne, I brought home a cereal box, and on the cereal box it said, directions. I'm not actually kidding. Pour desired amount of cereal in bowl. Add desired amount of milk. And I just remember as my yeshiva brain is working, I was like, let's say they had not written these instructions. Would I have poured an undesirable amount? Obviously, I'm going to pour as much as I want. But there are people who need these instructions. So should we say that that is the natural state of a human being? That people should not be given any responsibility until after they get married? It's ridiculous. Then you have children getting married. 2 children. At every stage of a child's development after they turn bar mitzvah, you should be looking to add to their responsibilities. To be clear, I do not mean that you should engage in child labor practices. I'm not saying that you have to make the kid clean the toilets. And I'm not even saying, by the way, that the kid should work for free. Encourage them. Encourage them to run a lemonade stand.
To what?
To run a lemonade stand. Encourage them. Could you make me the lemonade, Ma? No. Make the lemonade. It says over there on the box how much there. Now they might ask you, how much is an ounce? And you might need to hide in the bathroom so you can check it on your phone. But things will work out. There's no greater moment of helplessness in a parent's life when the child has to ask the mother, how many liquid fluid ounces are in a gram? And you're like, I think I learned this once. Okay? Encourage them to do a car wash. Encourage them. The more responsibility you give the child as they're growing up, not too young, we said from 13, the more the kid feels like a capable adult when things come their way. And you know what? Things will come their way that they'll need to be able to work out themselves. There are many, many, many young men and women who date and date and date and then come to their parents and ask, should I get married? Well, you have to make that decision. No, you've trained them really well how never to make their own decisions. And by the way, if you feel honored that your kid came to you to ask you your opinion about such an important issue, you have failed the assignment. Because you know what, if anything goes wrong, that's on you now. Yeah?
You train your kids this way?
You better believe it.
Okay. Like the young one, they're so young. Yeah.
Well, when they get to that age.
That's good.
Why do you think we failed as a parent? If a child that is in mid-20s is in love, but maybe not sure, maybe her career is not starting. Why do you feel we failed as a parent? If the child comes and has such a great relationship and we know the depth of this child, where did we fail here? I don't get that.
It's amazing if they ask advice.
Advice.
If they ask you to make the decision, that's a completely different thing. I can't know your heart. I don't know her heart. I've not been on these dates. I can't make any of those decisions for you. And by the way, even if I could, that's the hardest part of this. Even if you could make that decision, you should not. You see? That's my point. And there are many parents who are overreaching. And it's a disaster. Okay, let's continue. But thank you for that clarification. Advice is absolute. That's what you're there for. I'll give you an example. My daughter asked me, like, what's going on? You don't seem excited. Do you not like the guy? What did I say? I said, I have no idea who the guy is. You're on the dates with him. You need to figure out. I'm trying to be a sounding board for you, to listen to everything you say, and to present it back to you and ask you questions which will help you make the decision. I can't make this decision for you. I also can't be happy for you because I don't know who it is. You know when I'll be happy? When you're sure. When you're happy. And I'm sure that you're happy because you made the right decision. Not because you were unsure or you were emotional about it or you got swept into it or you felt any sort of pressure to move things forward. That's when I'll be smiling. Do you understand that? That's the parent in their advisory capacity. You stand back, they're the king, you're the king's advisor. Okay? Let's continue. Ben 18 l'chuppah. So at the age of 18, a person should get married. Now, I want to address what I think is probably the most obvious question on this Mishnah. And it's probably in the back of some of your heads already. What's the most obvious question on this Mishnah? Da na 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 na.
I think why it's all the time like referred to a male, then, or
That's a good question. That's a good question. It's not the most obvious question.
My thing is, why do you get married before you have a living?
Excellent question as well. Still not the most obvious question. You guys are doing well, though. You asked two great questions.
are there gaps between the ages?
Why are there gaps? Well, the child needs to fulfill that task before they move on to the next thing.
Why 18? Every 10 years.
What do you mean, why Shmona Esrei?
I think like if you like actually take 18, why actually give 18? Why not 20? למה לא 21?
Well, if I said Esrim ve'echad, you'd say, why not Shmona Esrei?
Yeah, but like I think
Come on, you're so close.
actually 18, if you translate it for Hebrew, it's chai. So maybe when you get married, you really chai, you live, this is the perfect.
I think it depends on the marriage, but yeah. Some people are like, it's killing me.
Actually, like when you get married, you became chad, אז בעצם החיים שלך מתחילים. When you're married.
I think that's 100% true and correct. But that's not the obvious question. You were so close.
Why after 18 it's only every 10 decades?
Why does it go to 10 years increments? Good question. Your question is going to be tied into the most obvious. I guess it's not the most obvious question. I'm just the Muppet here. Because, you know what the obvious question is? How are we making human beings into cookie cutter people where for every child, this is the age, and that's the age, and this is the age? Every child should get married at the same time?
No.
Every child is advancing to Gemara at the same time? No. Different people mature at different rates. Different people succeed at different times in their life. How could you give me an arbitrary number that's going to be relevant for everybody? I thought that's the most obvious question here. Is it the most obvious one now?
The premise was it's just a guideline, right? Yeah.
Okay, so one answer to that is it's just giving you a rough guideline. Okay. Yeah, that's one possible answer.
The Haredi get married young, 18, but they study in yeshiva, and after they koilem, the same style of life they have.
Well,
They get money to sit down and study.
it is very different after you get married than before, but I take your point. And in fact, they're not keeping the next one, doesn't it? The next one is, then they're pursuing a livelihood. Yeah?
They're doing the right thing. They're doing 18.
Well, in some cases, isn't that
Some people do 18. By the way, most Charedim today do not do 18. Hasidim in Israel, or Hasidim do 18. But most Haredi communities, most yeshiva guys are not getting married at 18. They're getting married earliest, 21, 22. I got married at 21. My wife was also 21. Yeah? Well, she was just under 21. She likes to remind me.
How many dates? After
Yeah?
3 dates you got married?
Sorry?
After 3 dates?
No. It's 4. No. It was much more than that. But after 4, I knew. I didn't say to her that I knew, but I knew.
Can I interject on something? We don't want the child at 18 years old to come to us and say, hey, what do you think of this young man? I hope you're as excited as I am. But at the same time, we have these young people being introduced.
The families decide.
So we are guiding them towards connecting with people that we don't even know because they come through a third party. So where is the non-cohesive reaction of the young person coming to the parent and say, hey, help me make this decision? As she said before, maybe 3 dates, 4 dates. As a parent, as a child, you feel like your parents know better what's right for you. I'm going from the principle that
Sure.
ultra-religious get shidduch.
I understand. So that the parents don't. Yeah, the parents don't. The parents don't make a decision. All the parents do is they do an absolutely insane amount of research,
That's it.
and then they present the kid. They're like, I checked this and I checked that, and the kid's going and the kid went and the family's like this, and their Shabbat table is the same, and they don't use plastic dishes. Like they do. There's the amount of research in the super Haredi is very, like what they're doing is, it's almost like every suggestion is like a home run. So by the way, you have this also in the secular world. You have people who pay, like on these dating websites or whatever, they have these algorithms that they go through all the different things that a person is saying about themselves, and they look for someone who's as close, and then they have, on top of that, you can pay extra, and there's a person who makes suggestions from the dating website or whatever it is, of people, and they suggest to you only like home runs. The more you pay, the more research they've done. Effectively, at the top of the pile in the secular world, you've actually reached what is the norm of a shadchan. That's literally what's happening. So we're like, oh my gosh, this is such an advanced way of dating. And all the Hasidim are like, yeah, it is. That's literally the point. They give the child the right to make the decision. But at that stage, it's almost like, exactly, it's almost like, do I like the person's personality? Do I feel like I can get along? You know why? Because everything else is right there. Does it have its flaws? Absolutely. But I always quote Winston Churchill, democracy is the worst form of government, besides for every other form that has ever been tried. Has its flaws, but there's not a single form of government that's better than that. So again, looking at the way the shidduch process actually works and the results in terms of marriages that stay together, there isn't another system on earth that actually is better than it at keeping marriages together. Even if you factor in the stigma associated with divorce in more religious communities, it's still so far away from where your average system of dating or approaching marriage or connection comes from. So the Mishnah is telling you an arbitrary number, and you're asking a good question, but I'm asking a more simple question in a way. Every person is different. So giving any age, in a certain sense, makes no sense. So one answer to this is it's a broad-based guideline. But do broad-based guidelines have any value if they are broad-based?
Well, they help you guide your life.
So
Your family.
I don't know if report cards today look like report cards used to. Report cards in my day, it was Aleph. Bet, Gimel, Dalet, right? Hopefully more Alephs than Dalets. More A's than U's, unsatisfactory or whatever it was, right? Today, they're actually telling you where the child rates on the curve, on the percentiles. Now, the percentiles are not about feelings. They're not about the teacher's ability to judge the kid and think what grade the kid deserves. It's like a rock hard science. These are all the grades across the nation. This is where your child rates in terms of reading. They're not reading at a second grade level. They're reading at a first grade level, or they're reading at a third grade level, whatever. What the Mishnah number 1 is doing is obviously telling you this is where children should be. Maybe that's one way of understanding it. But I think that there's another lesson, and this is what I meant when I said there's something about this Mishnah that strikes me, which has nothing to do with what the Mishnah actually says. But it's something that Rabbi Abragamov actually posted that reminded me of this. Rabbi Abragamov posted a picture, a meme, a couple days ago on our account, and the account went, "A dream that does not have a due date is a nightmare." So when you have a dream and you have a goal, but there's not a time by which you're going to get it done, you haven't decided at what stage is my red line for this thing, what will happen? Sorry? At that stage, it's unrealized. And that dream, it actually turns into a nightmare. Because it's this thing following you around, like teasing you, when are you going to get what you hoped for? And everybody's dreams are different, right? So I think one of the things that the Mishnah is telling you is, yes, make goals for life. Make marked stages of development. I don't care if they're arbitrary. If you're not working towards a timeline, what will you say at every stage of the child's development when they're older? What happens with us? There are things that I imagined I would have accomplished at a certain stage in my life, and I have not yet accomplished them. And you know why I have not accomplished them? Because you know what I said, and when I said when I'll accomplish them? When I'm older. When I'll be a grandparent, or when I'll be a parent, is not a guideline. It's not a due date. Because it's flexible. You don't know when that will happen. When you'll be a grandparent, or when you'll be a parent, or when you'll be married. And since it's a constantly moving target, you at no stage feel the pressure. I need to push myself to get there, because I'm getting close to my deadline. If we plan to fail, if we fail to plan, we plan to fail. It's as simple as that. So says the Mishnah, if you see your kid and he's running around and you're like, oh, he seems so happy, let him just play. He's never going to start reading Chumash. And if you see the kid who's reading Chumash and you never think, you know what, he has the capability of pushing him to do more, you're never going to push him to do more. Because no one wants to be that parent that's pushing the child, that's giving the child that next goal, and by the way, pushing is not the same as pushy.
Right.
Write that on your refrigerator. Let's continue with the Mishnah. Ben Esrim Lirdof. At the age of 20, you chase. Now, over here I've included the interpretation that they put in this specific translation, which is that the pursuing is of a livelihood. But really, pursuing, which is really part of what we answered earlier, is when someone goes 18 and then they go and they study, are they not listening to this Mishnah? Because the Mishnah says to pursue a livelihood. It doesn't say to pursue a livelihood, it says to pursue. Those times in your life when a kid is full of that energy. I had an interesting conversation a little while ago with my son-in-law and his friends. They came for Shabbat. And they asked me a question. And I said, you know, what you're asking is a good question, but it's very immature. I said, don't get offended. I said, with maturity, you understand balance. You can understand both sides of something, like I said earlier. A reason to do this, a reason to do this. But immaturity comes with it a sense of surety. You can't say surety without immaturity. You're sure of yourself. It's very hard to accomplish something unless you're positive you're right. It's almost impossible to work towards a goal with all that energy and excitement if you might be wrong. So the immaturity of youth is specifically so. It's that 20-year-old kid that will start the company and not listen to all the other people that are telling him he's going to fail. By virtue of his immaturity. Is that clear?
Yes.
That immaturity is necessary for them to strike a path, for them to be bold in what they're choosing. So Ben Esrim Lirdof, you need to chase. The indication of chasing something means that you're running after something that's running away from you. That means that at that age, the 20s, a person's 20s, are the time when they chase things that everyone else thinks are impossible. Things that are beyond, what people think they can achieve. Everyone else says, what are you running after? You're never going to catch it. But a person's 20s are filled with that sense of optimism. That, by the way, you know what old age calls that optimism? Naivete. The older person, with their wisdom, with their establishment in the business, will say, you're chasing a pipe dream. But there's a reason why the older guy, with his wisdom, doesn't achieve those crazy successes that you see these 19, 20-year-olds achieving in the tech world today. Because they just don't believe anyone that tells them that it can't be done, so they do it. A person's 20s are filled with that time. So I thought to myself that maybe one of the reasons why the Mishnah is telling you to get married at 18 is so that you have kids in your 20s. Why? Not for the sake of having kids in your 20s, but because to be a good parent, sometimes you have to believe in the impossible. When your kid is, being written off by the school, when everyone tells you that they're going to fail, when everyone tells you that there's impossible, we can't do that with this kid. We can't get him into this class. We can't do this. We can't accept the kid into the school. We can't. Being a parent means sometimes believing in the impossible, chasing things that are running away from you. And sometimes that's a description of children. That while we want so much to build a beautiful relationship with them, they run away. So the Mishnah conceptually wants you to have children in your 20s. Is this understood? We're not only talking about 20s here. Obviously, we're talking about me and you as well. I mean, if you're 20, then I apologize for including you in my category, but, right? Do you understand? Sometimes you're looking at your child and you're like, I know this won't work. But it's their decision to make. And in that moment, it's your responsibility to shift back into the parent that has kids in their 20s. And you help chase with them the thing that they're trying to achieve. There's something very special about that. The Mishnah continues and says, Ben shloshim lekoach. At the age of 30, a person needs to have strength. Lord help me. If you got married at 18, what's happening in your 30s? Your kids are teenagers. Ben shloshim lekoach. You need to have strength. But it's also true, like I said, with all those dreams that you started pursuing. Again, remember, this is a procedure. We're describing here a ladder. We're describing rungs on the ladder. And there are many times when this Mishnah, it's interesting how also, it's funny, even in the printout, it looks like a ladder this week, doesn't it? Right? Because they're all short sentences, right? This ladder is something that a person needs to refer to in the evolution of every part of their life.
It's like Shiva.
Yes, exactly. And you're looking at, as an example, buying a house. Is there no chasing of the impossible when you're buying a house? So you don't think you could ever make it happen in the mortgage and how we're going to make the payments? That's the 20s. So you're going through these stages, these processes in your life, those which you went through on an age-based, kind of spread. You're going through them also in every area of your life, in buying a house, in marrying off children, in raising grandchildren, in buying a business, in selling a business, in developing a relationship, in saving a relationship. Do you not see these stages? Saving a relationship. So after you've chased, I've got, thank you. After you've chased, so to speak, in your 20s, right, now comes the part where you need to double down with strength. You've done the chase. You've got the thing. But we've already learned in Masechet Avot that in Avot, when we say koach, strength, what do we mean? Do we mean physical strength? No. What do we mean? Good. Ezeu Gibor, who is mighty, Hakovesh et Yitzro, he who conquers his inner desires. So a big part of the conquering of their inner desires is a person, it takes a lot of strength to chase something and catch. But then, you know where the strength is needed? In staying. Have you not found that? There's a lot of effort expended in the chase to get the thing, whatever the thing is. But then, now you have it. Keeping it requires so much inner strength. You did the romance, you got the relationship. Keeping it, sometimes, koveshet yitzro. You need to conquer yourself. They said something, they did something. You need more breathing techniques than when you gave birth, okay? Ben 30 l'koach. Ben 40, at the age of 40, lebina. I remember when I turned 40, everyone was telling me, oh, now you have bina, now you have understanding. Now it's really interesting, because we're going to look at the evolution of understanding here. Where do you get understanding from? You achieve understanding after your lived experience encompasses, all of the pieces that we've had up until this point. You understand one side, then you understand two sides. Then you've decided to act upon your decision. Then you've decided to be able to discern which is the right way. Then you've decided to get married, to be able to commit to something. Then you've decided to chase, something which is impossible to do. You've achieved something that no one believed that you could. Then you've had the staying power to be able to build that thing into something. Now already you have some level of understanding. The Mishnah then says, after you have that understanding, ben 50 le'etza. At the age of 50, you've got that. You've achieved that understanding. You've got those, right? Now the child, by the way, and I love saying this, pardon me if this is a little stingy, okay? If you got married at 18 and your kids were born in your 20s, right? What happened in your 30s? They were teenagers. What happened in your 40s? They got married. Now is when you truly understand the stages, because you are watching the process happen in someone that you know and love so much, that you understand so well, but it's not you.
But explain.
How many parents of children getting married are hurt on behalf of their children? Can't believe you treated my son that way, my daughter that way, right? They're living the experience of marriage, and they're not even married to the person. Or sometimes even better said, they're not even married to the consuegros, to the family on the other side. So at the age of 40, when your kids are getting married and they're going through that process, you're engaged in the process of marriage, of understanding, but without the emotional baggage of it being you yourself. Finally, at the age of 50, that's when you're ready to give advice. And by the way, I always say this, it's the age where you're ready to give advice, not with the age when you're ready to offer advice. Don't offer advice. Wait till you're asked for it.
From a different generation.
Sorry?
They answer from a different generation.
Yes.
You don't know nothing.
It's true. And you know what happens? I always love to say this. You know why you get such an understanding at that stage? Because you realize that all the things you're telling your kids are the things your parents told you. And you told your parents that they don't understand, and they're from a different generation, and now you're hearing your kids say the same thing to you. And you're saying, you know what, I also thought that. And I, like you, was also wrong. I think perhaps that's the advice that the Mishnah is talking about. The advice that you were given by people wiser than yourself, that you have now learned to understand was actually correct. And now you pass on this wisdom that is generations old. The Jewish understanding of a family unit, the Jewish understanding of marriage, of relationships, of how a husband is supposed to be, how a wife is supposed to be. I always loved that line in the Ketubah. And I always realize that no matter how mature the Chatan is, he doesn't understand what he's signing. It says in the Ketubah, I would treat my wife in the true tradition of Yehudin Gavriin, of the old-time Jewish men, the way that they treated their wives with respect and with love and with care and with concern. And you know what? I think some of the young people think, we respect our wives more. Our wives have more freedoms, and our wives have more respect in the world that we live in than the exalted Jewish men of old. And I think that the point that they're raising is actually not germane at all to this. Those advancements in women's rights and in the way women live and the women's choices of careers and all these things, that has nothing to do with your marriage. You're not affording that to her because of you. That's just the world that you got married in. Pay attention. The world that old-time Jewish men got married in was a world where women had no rights, where a woman was your slave in the Middle Ages. And back then, every Jewish man was signing to treat his wife with respect. The point is, they were a plus 10 on the curve. Whatever everyone else in society was doing, they were doing 10 times more. So you think you're doing better than them by keeping up with society? This is not the pedestal that you put her on. This is the pedestal that history put her on. I always loved that part of the ketubah. To treat your wife 10 times better than society demands. Ana eflach ve'okir, it's amazing, the language there. Ve'asover, ve'achalkel. Amazing terminologies. I will cherish, I will respect, I will uphold, I will feed, I will clothe. Amazing. Carrying on. Ben shishim lezikna. At the age of 60, a person achieves zikna. Zikna in Hebrew means old age, zaken. But in Hebrew, zaken is always used to describe wisdom. It was Moshe and the 70 zikenim, not old people. It was Moshe and the 70 sages. Zikna, actually, zaken in Hebrew is an acronym for Ze Kana Chokhmah. This one acquired wisdom. Ze Kana Chokhmah. So my friends, this idea of Ze Kana Chokhmah, this one achieved wisdom, is really what the Ben Shishim has acquired. They've acquired a wisdom that is beyond the level of understanding. It's beyond the level of advice. I've been here for a while. I know how things work. And when you're at that age and your child is like arguing with you, and what they're saying is so logical. And you say to them with absolute, just calm, I know what you're saying. I get it. I understand. I really do. It makes a lot of sense. It's just not how things work. You ever catch yourself saying that? You're right. Logically, that is what should be. That is how they should react. That is what they should respond. You're right. That's just not how it is. That's the kind of wisdom you only get when you've lived through it. And that's what the Mishnah is telling you. A person achieves at 60. I'm quite excited for 60, by the way. I'm quite excited for that stage. Huh? Wow, Bezrat Hashem. Hashem should bless you. Kahena v'kahena, like the Pasuk says. He blesses him like this and like this. What's like this and like this? 120. Like this, 60 v'kahena, and like this. Okay. Ben Shiv'im, at the age of 70, a person has achieved seva. They've translated over here elderliness. Now that sounds to me like old age homie. That's an incorrect translation. The Pasuk says, Mipnei seva takum. In front of an elderly person, a person who's achieved that old age, and by the way, old age is an achievement. Mipnei seva takum. You're required to stand. Did you know that? So if a person who's achieved seva, at that age, you're obligated, 70 years old, you stand when they walk in the room. Yeah, you demand respect. Not demand, i.e. from yourself. Your age and what you've learned demands respect. Now, this to me is something which is quite interesting, I think. Can I share with you why? Just from a historical perspective. There was a historian, I think it was from Lashinsky was his name. He measured over the last 2,000 years, all the different exiles that the Jewish people have undergone from different countries. And he averaged out how long it takes for the Jewish people to be banished from the countries that they have moved to. Every house so often do they get banished. Huh? They say between 50s and 60s, between 50 and 60s years. So a 70-year-old will have been someone who knows not only the culture that they live in, but the culture of the country that they were chased out of. And I thought just from a historical perspective, it's interesting to notice that the person is capable of understanding the zeitgeist, but not by being in it. They understand the Weltanschauung, but not because they're part of it, because they have another culture to be able to weigh it and compare and contrast the two and say, yes, that's what they do here. But you ever hear the old guys share wisdom? You know, the grandma, they'll say in Halab, in Morocco, in Russia, and oftentimes, you're thinking, but they actually know what they're talking about. And the fact that they lived through a harrowing experience, the fact that they had to supplant themselves and plant themselves somewhere new, also gives them an element of seva that requires and demands respect. Ben shmonim legvura. Now here's where you see that the Mishnah is clearly not referring to very specific things. At 80 years old, the guy's strong? No. At 80 years old, a person has an internal gevura. Partly because at that stage, the Yetzer Hara, their physical desires are becoming weak. The Yetzer Hara, the desires of the Yetzer Hara are fading. They don't have the same sense of sexual desire. They don't have the same sense of, of anger, of kavod. At that stage, oftentimes, they realize what's important and what's not important. And this is so interesting, because as a person's physical Yetzer Hara desires start diminishing, the person becomes more and more חכם. אני רק אמרתי מה שאת אמרת. לכן אני חכם. לכן אני חכם. יש לי שני אוזניים ורק פה אחד. Listen to this, guys. Yeah? At that stage of a person's life where their desires are weakening, they actually become more soul than body. As the physical gevura is diminishing, the Yetzer Hara's grip on the person's neck is releasing, and the person can actually act in their highest form. Now, are all 80-year-olds like this? No. Some are crotchety, some are angry, sometimes they're not 100% there. But when a person is lucid and they're moving towards this place in their life where they're actually much more soul-based, it's a very different ballgame. I always reminded of this unbelievable story. Rav Yaakov Kamenetsky was on a flight, and he's sitting next to this guy, and this fellow's next to him. He's also an older fellow. And the guy says to him, he goes, Rabbi, I see, you're a beard, and I see you've got this hat on. You're obviously a religious rabbi. He goes, I don't know how you believe in all this garbage, all this nonsense. He says, I'm an atheist. I think that you guys are absolutely crazy. Rav Yaakov, if you know Rav Yaakov, he always had the most beautiful smile. He knew how to make people feel comfortable and feel loved. So he smiles at the guy. He says, whatever you want, dude. He's not a crusader. He's not an evangelical preacher. Anyway, 10 minutes into the flight, after the seatbelt goes off, one of the Rav Yaakov's grandkids comes up. He says, Saba, is everything okay? Zaidi probably called him. Is everything okay? Can I get you some food? Can I get you a drink? Do you need to go to the bathroom? No, thank you. 20 minutes later, the next grandkid, the next grandkid, the next kid, the whole flight. They're looking after him. They're making sure he's comfortable and making sure he's okay. Anyway, as the flight's about to descend, the man turns to Rav Yaakov. He goes, what I said before notwithstanding, he goes, I don't understand. He goes, I also have grandkids. He goes, but they never treat me like that. They never show me this respect, this level of care, this level of concern. It's almost like they have a reverence for you. He says, what's the difference between my grandkids and your grandkids? Rav Rav Yaakov smiled at him again with his warm, beautiful smile. And he says, I'm Jewish. And we Jews believe that God gave the Torah on Mount Sinai. And each generation has an obligation to pass it down to the next generation. And obviously in the transfer of information, things get lost. So every generation, they look to the generation above for the wisdom of Torah from God himself. He said, but you're an atheist. And every generation is one generation closer to being a monkey. Why should your children respect you? You should respect them. The order. They are more evolved than you in your line of thinking. In mine, in ours, it's the opposite. When a person is getting older, we treat old age with the utmost respect. That's the person you want to get the advice from. That's the people you want guiding you. Our leaders, you don't find the Gedolei Hador are not, charismatic 25-year-old JFKs. We don't have, Macrons with hair, wavy hair, running the people. We don't believe in it. The leaders of the people should be old, clear, lucid, 100% healthy, but have the experience. Rav Chaim Kanievsky is getting up there. Before him, Rav Aaron Leib Steinman. Such is the point that a Gadol Hador, his tenure, is from the age when he reaches old age until literally he passes away or he's no longer well enough to lead. The golden years are not something we pay tribute to. They're something we actually believe are golden. And I think to myself sometimes that when the Pasuk says, "V'nishmartem me'odo nafshotechem," that we have a commandment to guard our lives in Judaism and be healthy, because if you didn't get to the best part of your life, what a shame that would be. Guard your life. Be healthy. Eat healthy. Don't smoke. Look both ways before you cross the street. Yeah? Okay. Ben tish'im lasuach. At the end, lashuach. At the age of 90, a person already starts to stoop. Right? The body is bending over. What is this lashuach? What is this concept of lashuach, to bend? Excellent! Lashuach basadeh. Beautiful. But there's a bowing. The physical properties of the person mirror their spiritual dimension. There's a humility when a person realizes that he's not immortal. And as the body, so to speak, shuts down, the person achieves a greater sense of humility towards God. In the Amidah, when we want to show that we think God is in charge of everything, what do? We bend. We bow. When the body is in a constant state of bowing, that illustrates the person understands their mortality. They understand their job in life. They understand that God runs the world. Those elements are the gifts of a person in their 90th years. And finally, Ben Me'ah, like the Pasuk says, Ki'ilu met, at that stage, there's so little left in the physical way of the person that the person's job is to figure out what to do in the movements going forward. And I think that there's something very powerful in this as well. Choosing a successor is one of the most important jobs that a leader can do. And leaving the community in a state of disarray, where they don't know who to choose, who to apply, who to promote, means that when a leader passes, the people are scrambling, they don't know what to do. That's a big problem. So the Mishnah is telling you, there comes a point where you have to start thinking, what will be after I go? Life insurance policies is an example of ben me'ak ilumet. You have to think, what's my family going to do? How will they survive? How will they be on their feet? Planning for that future is crucial. And as we said earlier, planning for that future in the world to come is also a huge part. Instead of getting busy living and getting ready to, so to speak, we also need to be prepared for what's going to come in the next world, for the teshuvah, for the making things right, for the sorting out of things. And oftentimes, I just revisit that scene in my mind. I revisit that scene of standing over this, person who's about to pass away, asking them, do you have any unfinished business? And then scrambling to finish that business. There's no mitzvah to wait. Finish it now. Live the rest of the time that I have in this world with that already buried. There's almost not a single fight. There's almost not a single thing that isn't worth burying, so that you don't spend one more day carrying the poison, the anguish, the upset, the wedge aras, the ulcer that is bad feelings. It's just not worth it, no matter what it is. I just want to share this. We were having a conversation recently on the phone, and I was talking to the in-laws. We were talking about the wedding, and how much things are going to cost, and how much we're going to do and what they're going to do. And they asked me a question, and I said, listen, I don't know what the answer to the question is. I said, but one thing I do know is that for whatever cost, you and I, we're not going to fight. We're not going to get into. There's no price that's worth. I'll just work harder. I'll just figure out how to put some money together on the side. I'll just do something. There's no price that's worth bringing a fight under the chuppah, bringing a fight into their marriage, bringing a fight into the next generation. Bar minan. So I think sometimes to myself, I'm not there yet. But when I'm on that bed and someone's going to ask me that question, I hope to God that I could smile at them and say, nah, I took care of it already. Sorted. What a special thing that is. Hashem should bless us, Be'ezrat Hashem, to live wonderful, long, happy lives that we are proud of. Until 120, for me, for you, and for everyone we know and love, and Am Yisrael. Baruch Adonai.